What is up, ProGuides family, and welcome back to another patch rundown video. If you guys are new to this type of video, we're going to be running through all the changes that have taken place for patch 10.9, and we're going to be placing all the champions into a tier list to help you guys choose the best champions to climb this patch. Do keep in mind, however, that this is a fresh patch, and this tier list is purely predictions. Please let us know down below if you guys disagree or agree with any of these placements. And for our question of the day, which champion best represents your personality? For me, definitely in a first impression, most people are going to probably think Vladimir because I'm pale and I look like a vampire who's on the verge of dying. But if you get to know me, I would probably say that Poppy best represents my personality. I'll let you guys read into that however you want. But yeah, Poppy is the choice for me. Let me know down below what you guys think represents your personality. I want to see it. Alright guys, so kicking off the patch are the new skins joining the shop, my favorite section. To commemorate their victory at Worlds 2019, the Fun Plus Phoenix skin line is being added this patch. We're looking at FPX Gangplank, Lee Sin, Malphite, Thresh, and Vayne. Another Vayne skin? She's not Lux, but we'll give her a pass since this is a world skin after all. There are also a ton of new summoner icons and emotes, including FPX ones, like FPX Champions merch icon, FPX Worlds Champion gold icon, and many others. A ton of little legend icons are now available as well, and they are adorable. I'm a huge TFT fan. I've been playing a ton recently, so I'm definitely going to snag one for myself as well. With that out of the way, let's get into the balance changes. First up is items, and we only see one change this patch. If you guys watched our other videos, you'll probably know about this already, so you can skip this section, but Sanguine Blade's cost was reduced by 100, while its damage increased by 5. This is a double whammy. This item is going to be a much stronger purchase than before, maybe not as overtuned as it was on release, but it's still a buff. This item might have been over-nerfed in the past, and it honestly feels like there's no reason to purchase it aside from niche builds. Blade of the Ruined King is just way too strong, so it's nice that Riot is buffing its direct competition up. In an ideal world where these two items are balanced optimally, players should have to purchase while taking into consideration what they want to do in the later parts of the game. Hopefully, this buff should put Sanguine Blade in a place where it can contest Blade of the Ruined King's spot as a premier dueling item. That aside, let's run you guys through the top lane changes next. Starting with the balance changes, let's talk about Wukong. Read my lips. Well, if you could, except this isn't a video. Wukong nerfs. Finally, we can ban him most of the time instead of all the time. Wukong's armor was reduced from 34 to 31, his Q damage from 30 to 130 to 20 to 120, and his clone's damage from 40 to 60% to 35 to 55%. Riot hit him everywhere. I think these changes are well merited. Wukong has been an absolute beast on Summoner's Rift, and these nerfs won't make him irrelevant, but they're definitely going to help us all out. They're medium-sized nerfs, but considering that he's already an S+ tier, he'll definitely continue to stomp randoms on Summoner's Rift. Wukong possesses a ton of versatility and holds power in many different facets, so as a result, guys, he's still going to remain in the S+ tier. God, this hurts me so much. While these nerfs did affect him, he'll still need a couple more before he falls from his throne. Maybe we will just continue to ban him. Gnar was also due for some buffs, and look what we have here. Some Gnar buffs. Gnar has been underperforming for several patches now, and it's about time he finally got some love. Mega Gnar's Q refund has gone up from 60% to 70%, and Mega Gnar's E damage has gone from 50 to 190 to 80 to 220 damage. Gnar's E is an extremely risky ability to use aggressively. By buffing the damage on it significantly, players will now be rewarded much more heavily for committing to fights, giving up their escape tool for a sizable amount of damage. While trying to land on opponents with it can be tricky and require some adjustments, this should ultimately swing a ton of matchups that were previously close. Most of the time, Gnar players use their E to close the distance rather than hitting their opponents with it, so hopefully we see people trying to actually land it now. These buffs don't seem significant to push Gnar into the A tier, so we're going to be keeping him comfortably in the B tier for now. Aside from the nerfs in the top lane, we also have a buff, and it's going to none other than the champion that we didn't even think was a champion anymore, Quinn. Quinn received a buff to her Q this patch. Her Q's near sight duration has gone up from 1.5 seconds to 1.75 seconds. I personally feel like this is more of a play rate buff than anything since they mentioned her. Quinn isn't a popular pick by any means, so it's pretty difficult to accurately assess her power level regardless. Alongside the buffs to Sanguine Blade, Quinn should actually be in a much better place than before, although statistically she was already doing quite well as long as she was picked into the right matchups. We're not changing Quinn's placement just yet because these buffs feel rather minor, but with Sanguine Blade, honestly, no one can tell what's going to happen, so we're going to update her placement next week. Make sure to click that sub button if you want to stay notified. Cho'Gath also received buffs this patch. Cho'Gath's E damage went up from 22 to 70 to 22 to 82. This should help out his late game, but it's a rather minor buff, so we don't expect any huge changes with him. Hopefully this allows Cho'Gath to fit his role as an incredibly powerful tank in the later stages of the game more appropriately. Alright guys, that's it for the changes. Let's run through the tier list in the top lane. We haven't made any changes to the top lane tier list this time around. In our S+ tier, we still have Darius, Fiora, and Wukong. Like we said, Wukong is broken. I'm sure all of you guys already know this, and I don't even need to say this. Even with these nerfs, we're confident he still will be broken. Darius continues to hold the highest ban rate of all top laners. I can personally attest to contributing to this statistic. Laning versus him is awful. Honestly, I started to just learn ranged champions just because I hated playing against Darius so much. I want to continue to let you guys know that Nasus is a powerhouse right now, especially in lower elo. If you're a gold or below, please learn him. I know he might get bullied, but trust me, you're going to bully them way, way harder in the late game. Get away with what you can and abuse Nasus right now. He scales so incredibly well, and low elo games usually go past the 30-minute mark. Free LP, guys. You'll thank me later. We're going to continue monitoring picks, especially the Quinn and Wukong picks, just to see how the balance changes affect them. Next week, you can check out our mid-patch update. There are bound to be some changes that we actually make next week. Alright guys, that's it for the top lane. Now let's head into the jungle. First up, Kayn received a massive buff. We already have him in the A tier, and it's difficult to say whether or not he'll make the push to the S tier with this one. It's possible, but our analysts don't count on it because he's been underperforming in general. Instead, this buff will probably push him into a good place, not an OP one, but definitely a good one. However, what I'd like to watch out for is the accessory buff to his Q, which will now allow its bonus damage to apply to minions. Which reminds me, I need to tell you guys what the changes were anyway. His Q's cooldown has gone from 7 to 5 seconds to 6 to 4 seconds. Like I said, the bonus damage on it now applies to minions, and his W slow has gone up from 70% to 90% that decays. Kayn's Q is his bread and butter, and both his Shadow Assassin as well as his Ross transformation are going to be so much more powerful because of it. Not only does a lowered cooldown on his Q increase Kayn's damage output, it also increases his mobility, and in his red form, his durability as well. Solo lane Kayn might become a much more viable pick as a result of this. Even if it doesn't, this is a huge buff to Kayn's ability to help out his laners. After a gank, he can push lanes in much more quickly. Otherwise, if his laners need it, he can walk into their lane and push it out for them, and that way they can fit in a reset. Next up are the nerfs. Karthus actually needed a nerf, and guess what? He's received one. Karthus is having his base movement speed reduced from 335 to 325. I know a lot of you guys are a bit outraged by this one, but let me talk about the specific change first. Is it too little? I definitely think so. Is this an insignificant nerf though? I don't think so. This will not hurt Karthus' clear speed one bit as he's a ranged champion. Maybe he'll lose a second or two at most, but 10 movement speed is definitely a huge deal. Movement speed is how you chase people down and how you can run away from fights you can't win. Everyone keeps talking about itemizing damage, but mobility is so underrated. It's so valuable in the game. Karthus is already an immobile champion as he stands, or hovers, or whatever you want to call it. Does he have feet? I don't think so. Back to the point, this nerf makes Karthus much more fragile, and he already looks emaciated. When he's in a losing matchup, it's easier for his opponents to run him down. In winning ones, pushing forward for solo kills will be much harder as well. We're going to reluctantly put him in the S tier for now because his stats are still quite strong, but we're going to have to wait and see next week to see what happens with him. Most Karthuses aren't really afraid of death anyways, they just get to press R, and so he'll likely still remain in the S tier, but these are some nerfs that might actually affect his win rate. Trundle was also due for some nerfs. I personally thought that he was actually in a good spot, but our challenger analysts say that he was way too strong as an answer to tanks, and he was a great duelist altogether. Both of those things are true. His ult got nerfed pretty hard. Its cooldown increased from 100 to 60 to 120 to 80. This hurts a lot because Trundle doesn't typically build cooldown reduction as a jungler. You'll now be able to catch Trundle while he's vulnerable much more often. Nothing wrong with being vulnerable here and there, but doing it during the middle of a competitive game probably isn't the best time. Because of how short Trundle's ult was in previous patches, it was so hard to actually take him down. Sure, you caught him out, but that's not going to stop him from pressing R on a nearby tank and booking it. He can still do that now, but the cost is so much higher than before. Ideally, Trundle players want to use the ultimate proactively, not reactively. Trundle is still a great answer to tanks, so as a result, our analysts are suggesting we put him in the S tier for now, but to be honest, he might go into a high A tier pick next week. Do I think that his win rate will be reduced as a result of these changes? Absolutely. So we'll keep you guys updated next week on how his win percentage has changed across all elos. In terms of shifts, we only have one in our tier list, and that's going to be Fiddlesticks, who is now, guess what? He's an S+ tier pick. He took Warwick's place, who is now an S tier pick. Fiddlesticks received another buff this patch which targeted him as a support. However, this buff will still help him out as a jungler as well, and players have finally figured out how to play this lunatic. He's been stomping solo queue as an incredibly oppressive pick recently, especially against players who don't prioritize vision, aka anyone on my team in solo queue. This is where Fiddlesticks thrives. We've moved Warwick down not because he's done anything wrong, but just because he's not as versatile as the other S+ tier picks. He's still a solid pick though, so keep playing him if you enjoy playing him. Our S+ tier consists of Elise, Fiddlesticks, Zac, and Wukong. Make sure to keep your eyes peeled to see if those Wukong nerfs have affected him in the jungle or not. Our S tier consists of Lee Sin, Olaf, Rek'Sai, Karthus, Shaco, Trundle, Nunu, Echo, Graves, and Warwick. Don't sleep on Graves. If you're serious about climbing, I want you to start learning him right now. I've seen so many Grave players carry, whether they're on my team or on the enemy's team, the Graves just make such a big difference. This champion can do so much with his early aggressive playstyle, and I've actually learned him recently from one of our challenger coaches on ProGuides. They showed me some nifty tricks on how to kite the camps and how to increase my DPS. Very helpful. Recommend it to you guys if you're learning a new champion. Alright guys, that's it for the jungle. Now let's move on to the mid lane. We've only got one mid lane balance change this patch, and it's to Lissandra. Her Q's cooldown has decreased in the early game. Instead of 10 to 4 seconds, it'll now be 8 to 4 seconds. Reducing her Q's cooldown by 2 seconds in the early game should restore some of Lissandra's wave clear, and also allow her to trade against her foes much more effectively. This buff is huge because it's a partial revert to the nerfs that absolutely gutted her last season. While 8 seconds is still pretty long, we take those buffs when they come. Lissandra is definitely a champion who relies on team-focused gameplay. At the center of any play in the game, you need a mid laner that can push the wave. This buff is definitely going to help her in the most important way, but the real question is whether it's enough. We've bumped her up into the A tier for now because this buff does look pretty good for the most part, but we'll find out next week where she lands. The rest of our mid lane tier list sees no changes. In our S+ tier, we still have Fizz, Diana, and Talon reigning supreme. Following them in the S tier are Kassadin, Katarina, Echo, Cassiopeia, Vladimir, Zed, Yasuo, and Sylas. Cassiopeia has been one of the most dominant lane picks in the game. She's held some of the highest win rates of all of them, but do note that she's one of the most vulnerable ones as well. She provides a ton of damage and utility, so definitely consider picking her up as a pocket pick if you're trying to climb as a mid laner. But do keep in mind though, she is very difficult to play mechanically, so if you're in gold or below, really practice with her before you play a ranked game. Alright guys, that's it for the mid lane. Let's head into the bot lane. While there were no balance changes in the bot lane this patch, we do want to mention one shift. Ezreal is a champion who spikes incredibly hard during the mid game, and he's been absolutely murdering the competition. This guy is by far the most popular marksman pick, and with good reason. He's reliable, safe, and carries just as hard as any other marksman, if not harder. His incredible range makes him frustrating to play against, and as we all know, tilting your opponents is a surefire way to secure victory. He's a great pick in the current meta. Thus, our S+ tier now consists of Miss Fortune as well as Ezreal. Finally, the queen of solo queue has a king by her side. In the S tier, we have Vayne, Caitlyn, Jinx, and Kai'Sa. We've dropped Senna down into the A tier. Her nerfs last patch have significantly cut down her play rate as a marksman, and the little data that we do have shows they've certainly left her in a worse state than before. Poor Aphelios 2, look at what they did to the little boy. Absolutely murdered him. Don't sleep on Ashe, Jhin, and Varus this patch. It definitely feels like mid-game champs are where it's at right now, and utility carries definitely feel incredibly powerful with their pick-making potential. Alright guys, let's wrap things up with support. First up for support changes is Bard. Riot does not want to touch his damage, instead they want to touch what makes Bard a good support, and that's his utility. His W's movement speed bonus has gone down from 50% to 30%. His W's cooldown has been increased from 12 to 14 seconds. Finally, his E's cooldown has gone up from 18 to 14 to 22 to 16. Overall, Bard should still be an incredibly powerful laner, but his ability to roam and utility at all stages of the game have taken a hit. None of these feel too significant to take him out of the S tier, however, because he still packs a mean punch during the laning phase. Win lane, win games, right guys? I've lost too many games after saying that. And right after we placed Nami in the S+ tier, they decided to nerf her. Coincidence? I think not. However, these nerfs aren't huge, so we'll wait to see whether or not we need to drop her down on the list. She's been classified as way too strong for average players. Nami's base HP has been reduced from 489 to 475, her base mana from 277 to 265, and her passive's movement speed bonus from 60 to 45. Nami should be a little bit squishier and also a little bit less oppressive as a result of these nerfs. Having 15 less movement speed might not seem like much, but early on when players don't have boots, it's actually a pretty big deal. Fortunately for Nami players, her damage and sustain aren't being touched, but at the end of the day, these minor nerfs are still going to take a toll on Nami's win rate. I'm kind of surprised though, because usually nerfs like these are targeted at elite players. These nerfs were actually kind of due, because Nami's power and low elo were so intense. I don't know, we'll have to wait and see what effects they ultimately have. Finally, Fiddlesticks received a buff aimed at increasing his win rate as a support. His reworked E was definitely a nerf to support Fiddlesticks, as opposed to the annoying point-and-click bouncing crow that silenced you and left you unable to do anything in retaliation. It's now a single cast burst spell. This has made support Fiddlesticks feel a bit underwhelming, and Riot has decided to buff him yet again. Fiddlesticks' E damage has been increased from 70 to 190 to 70 to 210. This should hopefully incentivize players to continue maxing his E and assist his hit-and-run playstyle as a support. For now, however, in the support position, he'll remain as a D tier pick. Our support tier list goes untouched this patch. The balance changes we've seen here are substantial, but not enough for us to pull the trigger on moving any placements. We'll closely monitor these picks, however, and let you guys know if anything changes next week. And I hate to say this, guys, but Yuumi is a power pick right now. Give her a spin, find a duo, or you can be like Saskia and just play Yuumi with your feet while you play ADC on your main. Alright guys, that concludes our 10.9 patch rundown. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a like, comment, and consider subscribing for more content like this. We are doing a ton of live classes on ProGuides right now, which is super fun. You get to play with all the great pros like Pobelter, Mike Young, Zyrene. If watching a live class and playing with a pro interests you, head on over to ProGuides. We have live classes going on every single day across many different games. That's it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck in your next few games, and I'll see you on the Rift.